I thought paying for the reunion would finally buy me something I had been chasing my whole life, a place where I belonged. I imagined the old lake house shining in the summer light, the one my parents always described as the happiest time would soften all the years I had felt like an outsider in my own family. I covered everything: the venue, the travel, the food, even the matching t-shirts. I told myself it would be light-hearted a way to capture photographs that might finally look like proof of family. But when I opened the box and pulled out mine, the bold letters on the front punched me in the chest. Biggest disappointment. For a moment, sound drained from the room. Then Laura chuckled, shaking her head. Relax. It's just a joke. Ben raised his beer, smirking. Come on, man. It's funny. My mother gave a soft PTA laugh. My father just smiled like someone watching a stranger stumble. I forced my mouth into a smile. Right. Funny, I said, folding the shirt with careful hands and placing it at the edge of my plate as though fragile. No one noticed that they were trembling. The cruelest part wasn't the words. It was knowing they had been printed with my money. I had paid for every shirt, every detail, every slice of nostalgia. They used my credit card to brand me with their favorite insult. The kind of fatigue that seeps into your bones pressed down on me heavier than rage. I stood up slowly. Be right back. No one looked up. Upstairs, my bag sat waiting. I unzipped it, pulled out the navy folder thick with parchment I had chosen for its weight. I had rehearsed this reveal for months. I pictured my mother crying as she read her mortgage was cleared, my father standing in quiet pride at the word retirement, Laura whispering she had misjudged me, Ben muttering he had no idea. I thought maybe for once they would say we're proud of you. I had even considered champagne. Instead, I carried the folder back down. They were crowded together, taking a group selfie in their new shirts, laughing. I stopped behind my empty chair, slid the folder open, and began tearing the documents in half, slowly, deliberately, the sound of parchment splitting louder than their chatter. Laura turned, frowning. Wait, what are you doing? Ben leaned forward. Is that a contract? My father's voice cut through uneasy frank. I placed the shredded halves neatly in front of my plate, smiled with a sharper edge than I'd ever shown, and said, Enjoy the shirts. Then I walked away. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just the creak of wooden boards, the sigh of the screen door, and the cool night air brushing my face like freedom. My phone began buzzing before I even reached the car. One call, then another, then 3 more. I let them ring. Let them read what I had destroyed first. In the driver's seat, I sat staring at my hands on the wheel for 10 minutes. Calm. Too calm. My body hadn't caught up with the finality, but the laughter replayed in my mind, my mother's chuckle. Laura's smirk, Ben's shrug. They thought it was harmless. But it wasn't harmless. It had never been harmless. At 9, Ben broke the neighbor's window, and I was grounded for not stopping him. At 12, Laura lied about failing a test, and I was called a bad influence. My first C in math brought sighs and sarcasm at dinner, while Ben's failed semester earned praise for trying. At 17, I begged them to co-sign a small loan. They said no, you need to learn responsibility. This while Ben wrecked his second car and Laura packed for Europe with their money. So I learned responsibility alone. I worked nights, slept 4 hours a day, taught myself code. I built a service, then a platform. I learned how to hear no and keep going. I cleared my student debt in one lump sum. I raised 6-figure investments. My company went viral. And I told no one, because I knew if I did, they would twist it into another joke, or worse, take credit. Still, I helped. Quietly. Anonymous donations. Untraceable transfers. Mortgage payments slipped in like miracles. College funds set up in shell accounts. I told myself family mattered, that maybe if I gave enough, they'd finally see me. But last Christmas proved the truth. I offered to fly everyone to a ski lodge. My mother waved me off. Save your money. Then she posted online that Laura had surprised them with a family trip. That was the day I decided no more shadows. The reunion was meant to be my reveal. Signed documents, mortgage gone, retirement secured. A down payment for Laura. Debt relief for Ben. A chance for all of us to start over. Instead, I got a t-shirt. They thought it was a harmless joke. They had no idea what they had just thrown away. By the time I reached the edge of the city, the story had already begun to twist. My phone buzzed non-stop, a blur of calls and messages. One text made me stop breathing for a moment. "Hey man, your sister posted something. Said you had a breakdown at the reunion. You okay, breakdown?" That was the word Laura had chosen, and it spread faster than wildfire. Curiosity pulled me to open Facebook. There it was, a photo of the dinner table shirts spread out like trophies, wine glasses half full, the cake untouched in the middle. Her caption read, "Some people just can't handle being part of a family. We still love you even when you self-sabotage." No names, but everyone knew. Comments piled up like witnesses in a trial I never agreed to. "So sorry, girl. You did your best." Another, "Some people are just toxic." Each line stabbed deeper than the shirt had. Then came Ben's message. "Dude, you embarrassed all of us. We tried to include you, and you made it a scene. Get help. Include me." I almost laughed out loud in the quiet car. Include me? When the shirt they handed me screamed disappointment, I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my email, forwarded the original documents to my attorney, asked him to timestamp them, and copied my assistant. 5 minutes later, her reply glowed on my screen. "Do you want me to push the Forbes feature up? I can attach the scans." "Yes," I typed back. Just one word. Because I knew how this went. They had the story. And my family had always been good at rewriting history fast and loud. But this time, I had proof. The article went live that weekend. The headline hit like a hammer. The underdog founder who secretly funded his family for a decade, then walked away. Inside were scans of the very papers I'd shredded at the reunion, signatures and dates crystal clear. The article detailed the mortgage payments, the anonymous donations, the shell accounts I'd created for their children's futures. It spelled out the valuation of my company, $30 million and climbing. And it explained in words I had never said out loud why I finally cut ties, not from anger, but clarity. The world responded instantly. My inbox flooded with congratulations, strangers thanking me for my courage, colleagues who had never known the whole truth offering their respect. Then came the apologies dripping in from relatives who had stayed silent for years, and predictably the panic. Laura's voicemail shook with outrage. "Why would you make this public? You're humiliating us." Ben texted seconds later. "Wow. Hope you're happy. You've ruined the family name." My mother's message was almost laughable. "We need to talk. You misunderstood the joke. We were just having fun." "Just a joke," I muttered into the empty room, shaking my head. It amazed me how fast they could double down, as though decades of my silence had trained them to believe they could twist anything. But I didn't need to argue. The article was doing the talking for me. By nightfall, it had spread further. A YouTube channel dissected it with dramatic music. A podcast turned it into a discussion about toxic families and boundaries. Comments poured in. "He's not a disappointment. He's a survivor. Wish I had the courage to do the same." Strangers saw me more clearly than my own blood ever had. Ben tried to push back. He posted a thread insisting I was unstable, dramatic, exaggerating for sympathy. "We always tried to include him," he wrote. "He just wanted to be the victim." But replies came fast, armed with receipts. Someone uploaded a screenshot of the debt contract I had drafted for him, dates circled in red. Another shared an old audio clip where he laughed about me never finishing anything. The hypocrisy unraveled in real time, and he couldn't stop it. Laura worked her damage control through relatives. Screenshots trickled back to me. He's not well. The money has gone to his head. This isn't about a shirt, it's about his issues. She painted me as the fragile one, the unstable one. My parents, as always, stayed quiet in public, but whispered in private. I knew the lines by heart, he just took it the wrong way. He snapped. But this time, the narrative didn't stick. Messages arrived from unexpected places. A cousin wrote, "I always noticed they treated you differently." A neighbor from our childhood said, "I remember your mom calling you a late bloomer," while bragging about Ben's internship. I always thought it was unfair. For the first time in my life, people validated what I had lived through. Proof came not just from papers and numbers, but from voices who had seen the cracks all along. One evening, as the news cycle still churned, I sat alone on my couch, staring at the skyline outside my window. My phone buzzed with notifications I ignored. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. Not full, not permanent, but enough to take a deep breath without feeling like I owed someone an explanation. I whispered into the quiet, "I don't need their table anymore," because that was the truth. I wasn't the kid begging for a chair at their feast. I had built my own table. And the people who sat there came not because of obligation, but because they wanted to. Still, grief lingered. Late at night, I caught myself wishing my father would call to say I was wrong about you. Imagining my mother whispering, "I'm sorry." Pretending Laura might admit I misjudged you, or Ben might say I had no idea. I let the fantasies run their course before shutting them down. They were ghosts, nothing more. But even as grief ached, I knew something else. I didn't need their validation anymore. I had stopped begging for words that might never come, and yet I could already feel it. They weren't finished. The first letter came folded in my father's careful handwriting, the kind he used for tax forms and official papers. I unfolded it at my kitchen table, half expecting something raw, half bracing for disappointment. It read, "We're still your family. We love you. We hope you can move past this." Not once did it say sorry. Not once did it mention the shirt, the laughter, or the storm of lies they spread within hours of me leaving. I set it aside, unopened envelopes gathering dust like old bills. A week later, another arrived, longer this time. "Think about all the meals we cooked for you, the rides we gave, the roof we provided. Don't let this one misunderstanding erase everything." I laughed bitterly. They listed basic parenting as though it canceled out decades of belittling. "A misunderstanding?" I muttered into the empty room. "You printed my humiliation and called it family." Ben tried something different. He posted an old photo of us as kids, grinning with ice cream dripping down our wrists. His caption read, "Miss my brother. Still love him, always will." The comments poured in sympathy, nostalgia, people tagging me. I stared at the frozen version of us before favoritism carved the distance. I didn't reply. The only people I owed were the ones who stood by me when I had nothing, and none of them were wearing matching shirts. Consequences trickled in, slow but steady. Laura's husband grew tired of her endless narrative about being victims of cancel culture. One day, he left. He took the kids and moved in with his sister. I didn't hear it from her. Someone else told me. Ben lost a speaking engagement at a minor conference. An organizer had been forwarded the Forbes article and an old podcast clip where he laughed about me never finishing anything. As for my parents, they tried refinancing their house. A friend in finance told me the bank flagged instability. It wasn't directly my doing, but I had stopped sending the quiet transfers that had kept them afloat. That was on me, but I didn't celebrate. None of it brought satisfaction. Natural consequences are not revenge, they're just reality when scaffolding is removed. For years, I had been the invisible structure holding everything together. When I stepped away, the cracks showed. That wasn't cruelty, it was truth. Meanwhile, my own life stretched open in ways I hadn't known were possible. I started leaving my phone in another room at night. I booked trips without guilt. I worked on projects not for approval, but because they mattered to me. My mentorship program filled up within days, then filled again when I doubled capacity. During one session, a student said quietly, "They told me I'd never make it, but if you could." He trailed off. I smiled, finishing the thought for him in my head. Then, so can I. In interviews, people asked about success, but I kept circling back to boundaries. A boundary isn't about shutting people out, I explained. It's about protecting the part of you that deserves to breathe. Someone later repeated that line online, attaching their own story of walking away. I hadn't meant to become a symbol, but maybe that was the gift hidden in the wreckage. Grief still visited uninvited. Some nights I imagined my father finally admitting I was wrong about you. Or my mother whispering, "I'm sorry." Or Laura sighing, "I misjudged you." Ben shaking his head, I had no idea. I let the fantasy play out before closing it like a book I didn't need anymore. Those words might never come, and that was fine. One evening, restless, I opened the box in my closet with the spare copies of the documents I had torn. I spread them across the table. Running my fingers over their weight, I realized they didn't feel like wasted effort anymore. They felt like a fence I had finally finished building. Not a fortress, not a wall, just a clear line, mine on one side, theirs on the other. Updates about my family still slipped through cracks. A cousin texted, "Your mom says you're just going through a phase, that you'll come back once you've cooled down." Another screenshot showed Laura cropping me out of childhood photos, rewriting the past pixel by pixel. I deleted them before finishing. Not out of bitterness, but because looking back was dangerous. Curiosity was relapse, and I had already stepped out of the costume labeled disappointment. 2 years passed before I realized how much ground I had gained. At a friend's wedding beneath golden string lights, someone's cousin clasped my hand. "Wait, you're the t-shirt guy, aren't you?" she asked, eyes wide. For the first time, I laughed with no bitterness in it. "Yeah," I said, "that's me." Later that night, a stranger messaged me. Just one line. "Thank you for showing people like me that it's okay to walk away." I saved it, not because I craved recognition, but because it captured the truth I had been circling all along. Leaving wasn't selfish, it was survival. I thought back to that night at the lake house, the laughter, the cotton shirt, the sound of parchment ripping. I had never truly been angry that they didn't love me the way I needed. I was angry that they pretended they did while cutting me down each time I stood tall. Once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. And once you walk out the door, you can't go back. Time didn't erase what happened, but it taught me how to live around it. By the 3rd year, the calls from my family slowed to almost nothing. Yet silence has its own weight. Sometimes, while cooking dinner alone, I'd picture them at their table across town, telling the story differently. Maybe in their version, I'd lost control, shredded papers in a manic outburst. Maybe I'd abandoned them for money. Maybe I was always the unstable one. I caught myself once whispering, "They're still writing the script, aren't they?" Then I shut the thought down. I had spent too long letting them narrate my life, but they didn't stop reaching out entirely. Another letter arrived heavy with practiced sincerity. "We've all made mistakes. We're family, and family forgives. Please don't let pride stand in the way of healing." I stared at the word forgives. Forgives who for what? I whispered into the quiet, "You branded me with shame and called it love." I folded the letter once, slid it into the drawer with the others, and left it unopened. Ben turned to social media again, He posted a cheerful photo with Laura writing, "Sad when someone chooses ego over family." We tried to help him, but money blinded him. Comments flooded in sympathy like sugar. "Stay strong, family is all that matters." I scrolled for a minute, then shut it down. Feeding that narrative was like feeding a fire. But life has a way of balancing the scales. A week later, one of Ben's old recordings resurfaced him joking on a podcast that I never followed through on anything. This time, it went viral alongside the Forbes article. People weren't kind. Imagine mocking your brother while living off his money. Another wrote, "Not every black sheep is lost. Some just stop grazing with wolves." Watching it unfold, I didn't feel triumph. Just a strange, steady calm. Laura tried another strategy. She leaned on relatives. Screenshots made their way back to me. "He's not well. He's always been looking for a reason to leave." I read the words and whispered, "Maybe I was looking for a reason, and maybe you gave it to me." One evening, an aunt called. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. "Your mom says you misunderstood, that you took things the wrong way, that you just snapped." I gripped the phone tight. "Snapped," I repeated. "I didn't snap. I shredded a life I built for them, because they made sure I knew what I was worth printed on cotton." Silence stretched between us. Then she sighed. "I believe you. I always did." 3 words I had never expected. I always did. They didn't erase the years, but they soothed something inside me. Proof that someone had seen me clearly, even back then. Despite everything I realized, I didn't hate them. Hate was too heavy. What I carried was grief. Grief for the childhood that never gave me praise. Grief for the adulthood that never satisfied them. Grief for the reunion that could have been redemption, but turned into proof nothing had changed. Therapy gave me language for it. One afternoon, I admitted I thought if I gave enough mortgage payments, vacations, even that ski trip, they'd finally love me the way I needed. My therapist tilted her head. "And what did you learn?" "That money doesn't buy belonging," I said quietly. She nodded. "Money buys silence. And silence is not the same as peace." Those words etched themselves into me, so I poured energy into people who wanted to be there. My fellowship expanded. Dozens of young people applied, many sharing stories that mirrored mine. One wrote, "My parents say I'll never be enough. But if you could build your own table, maybe I can too." Reading that, I realized I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was giving others permission to do the same. At a conference after I spoke about resilience, a man approached me. His hands shook as he held out a notebook. "You don't know me, but your story saved me. I walked away from people who only tore me down. And I finally feel free." I shook his hand and smiled. "Then we both survived," I said. Walking back to my hotel, I thought about the phrase I had chased all my life. "We're proud of you." Maybe I would never hear it from them. But maybe the real victory was finally being able to say it to myself. So when the next letter came, I didn't even open it. I slid it straight into the drawer. My boundaries had become habits, quiet, steady, unbreakable. Still echoes of the reunion followed me. At a friend's wedding beneath golden lights, someone grinned as they shook my hand. "You're the t-shirt guy, right?" For once, I laughed with them. "Yeah," I said. "That's me." The last time I opened the box of spare documents, I half expected fury to rise again, the sting of everything I had planned to give them. But as I spread the parchment on the table, I realized the weight no longer hurt. The sharp edges where the first set had torn weren't scars anymore. They were fence posts, proof that I had finally drawn a line. I whispered to myself, "This isn't loss. This is closure." Messages still came in, though I never asked for them. A cousin wrote, "Your mom says you'll come back once you've cooled down." A former neighbor tagged me in an old photo Laura had posted, cropping me out as if I'd never been there. I pressed delete before the ache could return. Not because I didn't care, but because curiosity was just another way back into their script. And I wasn't auditioning anymore. Instead, I poured myself into life that felt mine. The fellowship grew. Applications arrived with stories that sounded eerily familiar. Kids told they'd never measure up, people dismissed as late bloomers. One girl's letter made me pause. If you could walk away, maybe I can too. I smiled, sliding her application into the acceptance pile. Maybe this was my family now, not by blood, but by choice. Therapy peeled back more truths. One afternoon, I said I spent years dreaming of one perfect evening where they'd finally see me. The reunion was supposed to be that night. My therapist leaned forward gently. What if it was just not the way you pictured? Her words lingered. The night had changed everything, not them, but me. Still, some evenings I let the ghost conversations play. My father saying I was wrong about you. My mother whispering, I'm sorry. Laura admitting I misjudged you. Ben muttering, I had no idea. I listened for a while, then shut the door in my mind. Those voices belonged to a world that didn't exist, and waiting for them only kept me tethered. Walking away had once felt like surrender. Now it felt like survival. Like the first clean breath after years of smoke. 2 years later, at a wedding under golden lights, someone's cousin shook my hand and laughed. Wait, you're the t-shirt guy, right? For the first time, I laughed too. Yeah, I said. That's me. Later that night, a stranger messaged me. Thank you for showing people like me that it's okay to walk away. I saved it. Not because I needed recognition, but because it reminded me my choice wasn't just for me. It was a map for others. Sometimes I wonder if my family still tells the story differently. Do they miss me? Or just the version of me they could control? Do they sit at the table and call me selfish, unstable, ungrateful? Maybe. Maybe not. But I don't check anymore. Their narrative isn't mine to live in. One morning, on a run around the lake, a screen printing truck rattled past. The logo on the side made me laugh out loud. Who would have thought a t-shirt could change everything? But maybe that was the point. Sometimes the cruelest words when spoken out loud give you permission to walk away. If I could go back, I wouldn't save the papers. I wouldn't soften the blow. The only thing I would change is how long I waited to believe my own truth. Because if you grow up in a cold room, the first warm day feels suspicious. But it isn't. It's your body remembering what it deserves. So if you're listening to this and you've been handed a label by people who call it love, but wield it like a weapon, hear me clearly. You are allowed to set it down. You are allowed to walk away. Leaving isn't the end of love. It's the end of begging for it. I don't hate my parents. I don't hate Laura or Ben. I hope they find their peace. But I finally learned that their peace isn't mine to build, and my worth isn't theirs to measure. Sometimes, in the quiet of night, I still hear echoes of that weekend, the laughter, the tearing parchment, the buzz of unanswered calls. But the sound that stays with me isn't theirs. It's mine, the steady footsteps across wooden floors, carrying me out the door into the night air, toward a life I chose for myself. If this story touched something in you, if you've ever been labeled a disappointment when you knew you were more, let this be your reminder. You don't need their permission to be whole. Like this video if it resonated, share it with someone who needs courage tonight. Subscribe for more stories of resilience and family truth. And tell me in the comments, what's the label you're finally ready to leave behind?